Hello and welcome to the Conservation Burial Alliance's webinar, December 2025. We're going to hear today from Bethany Foshee from Nature's Burial at Blazing Star Sanctuary, which is part of Katy Prairie Preserve and the Coastal Prairie Conservancy. She's going to talk a little bit about what their experience was in launching Nature's Burial. So Bethany, thank you so much for taking some time and sharing your story with us today.
Thank you. Thank you, Jody. And thanks to everybody who's joining today/tonight, depending on your time zone. So again, my name is Bethany. If I haven't met you yet, I wear two hats. I'm the Stewardship and Outreach Director for Coastal Prairie Conservancy. We are a nonprofit land trust working on the Gulf Coast of Texas. And then I'm also the project manager/cemetery manager for Nature's Burial, which is shown in this really fun aerial image of the Katy Prairie and our constructed wetlands that surround our conservation burial ground. So tonight, I'm going to tell a little bit about the Coastal Prairie Conservancy, because that's who we are. And I'm going to tell our story. How did we launch Nature's Burial? What were some of the challenges? What have we learned? And how is it going? Because we're just now in finishing our first year of being open as a cemetery. So, and then Jody's going to help me with questions at the end. So if you have a question for us, you can type it in the chat, and then we'll have time for questions at the end as well. And I'll have my contact info on the last slide also. All right. So if you're not familiar with us, we're on the Gulf Coast, Southeast Texas, near Houston. That's the biggest city that we are near. But we're a regional nonprofit. We work in a 9-county region conserving land. And where we work is a rapidly developing region. So this map shows our home, the Coastal Prairie, and Houston. And the Katy Prairie on that map is that little brown blob. So the Katy Prairie originally covered about 750,000 acres of tall grass prairie ecosystem. And what's really cool about the coastal prairie that extends from South Texas all the way over to around Lafayette, Louisiana, is that this is the southernmost extent of North America's tall grass prairies. So we've got prairies all the way up in the glacial carved Canadian system through the middle of the country, our breadbasket, if you will, and then we're the tail end of the prairie environment. And it's a really dynamic, beautiful ecosystem, but also very rare. Most scientists estimate that about 1% of the original coastal prairie is left unaltered. So where we work is as endangered as the rainforest, the coral reefs, but it doesn't get as much airtime or time on National Geographic. So that's our job here, is to let people know about this biome and to get more help protecting it. One of the best things about the coastal prairie is also the bird life. We have really high biodiversity in Southeast Texas because it's a subtropical climate and because it's a migratory flyway during the spring and winter seasons. The other thing I love about the coastal prairie and the Katy Prairie is the wetland systems. And so this really beautiful aerial on the right is from the 1930s. And this map shows the heart of our lands, which is the Katy Prairie Preserve System. So the blocks of land that you see on this map are lands that we protect today, overlaid over that 1930s aerial. And what you see, all these little dark polka dots all over the landscape. Like, look at all of these. These are all what we call prairie potholes. So this was a prairie pothole dominated prairie ecosystem. And it's interesting, geologists, ecologists seem to still debate about what carved all of these potholes, all of these small, shallow wetlands all over the landscape. We know a lot of it was from past river courses. The Brazos River was a big river. As it changed course, it would leave meanders, it would leave dimples in the terrain. It was a very soft Pleistocene sandbank. And then we also know that North America's bison migrated all the way down to the coastline of Texas. And when bison would wallow, they would also leave potholes on the landscape. Do we think bison made all of those? No, but they definitely made some of them. So what's striking in this image is on the right, present day. Do you see any potholes? No. So there are some, but there are very few remnant prairie ecosystems that still retain the dimple characterization of our prairie pothole ecosystem. So a lot of what we do, like at Blazing Star, is bring those wetlands back, which are vital. This just shows another layer. This shows the stream channels that flow over our Katy Prairie Preserve system. And these are the headwaters to one of the major waterways that then goes across Houston. So one of the important functions of the Katy Prairie is that we protect the giant city of Houston from downstream flooding. We are one giant sponge for water, and that's our value to people in the region. More fun maps. This will show you the rapid urbanization that happened on the Katy Prairie. So originally I said we know the Katy Prairie covered this area, which is around 750,000 acres of land. And then this is overlaid with the gray concrete jungle, if you will, expanding westward. So that's 1990. 2002, you can see we've got some protected lands. We're starting as a nonprofit to protect properties here, but you can also see more gray. 2006, 2010, 2014, 2017, and 2023, and 2025. So here we are this past year. Our nonprofit started way back in 1992, and our founders thankfully started then when land was affordable and when there was not that much development around us. They had the foresight to start protecting land permanently, contiguous Katy Prairie preserves, so that we could protect a block of habitat for wildlife, and we could restore the prairie ecosystem, and we could also protect local agriculture. So a good chunk of the Katy Prairie preserves are working lands where we have cattle grazing and we still have historic rice farming on the Katy Prairie. One more map. We have lots of maps in our presentations. Our nonprofit was originally called the Katy Prairie Conservancy because the Katy Prairie was home base. So here's the Katy Prairie right here in the map, overlaid Waller County and Harris County, straddling that county line. But also on this map, you'll see that our organization as a land trust, we also protect parcels in our 9-county region. And our goal long-term is to protect at least 10,000 acres in each county. And we like to protect land as contiguous as possible, so it's meaningful ecologically. And there's where we're at today. We protect currently about 34,000 acres in total, and about 19,000 acres of that are on the historic Katy Prairie. We conserve land through land protection agreements with landowners, or direct acquisition, or even donated real estate. Once we have land, we have to steward those properties, including our conservation burial ground. We do that through prescribed burning, prescribed grazing, direct hands-on prairie restoration, creating those wetlands, bringing back prairie potholes, and then controlling invasive species. Another arm of our nonprofit is outreach to the community, like we all do here, educating people about the value of this ecosystem and how they can get involved and what they can do at home. So stemming from all of that, back in 2017, Elisa Donovan, our vice president and general counsel, and Elisa's on the Zoom with us tonight. Back in 2017, she was hired by then Katy Prairie Conservancy, and she started talking about an idea of launching a conservation burial ground on the Katy Prairie. We knew it would be meaningful for the community. We knew it could provide really innovative conservation funding for all the work we do. And we knew it would be a great way to connect with the people in our region. So we launched this as an initiative, beginning with just conversations between people back in 2017. A lot of what happened in the years that followed between 2017 and 2023 was making the case. And those of you that are working on launching a conservation burial ground or have succeeded know that this is a big part of making it happen, is getting all of the right people in the room, and getting everyone's buy-in on the idea. And so we explained to everyone that this is a win for nature while also a win for people. It fulfills a direct need in our community. There is no other green cemetery in the Houston region currently. We're the only one. And so we knew we needed to fulfill that need. It allows people to engage with conservation in a really personal way. And it's plot by plot direct restoration of the landscape. So it gives people a sense of ownership and belonging with every single burial service. And then it's truly innovative grassroots support. Our whole mission is to build grassroots. And so with each plot purchase, those families are helping us with our mission. And of course, we're providing a new sanctuary for people and for wildlife. Our original goal was to conserve new land that we did not already own or protect through conservation easement. So this is a beautiful map of the Katy Prairie. The Katy Prairie is divided into several sections. We have Greater Indian Grass Preserve, Nelson Farm Preserve, which is also a rice farm, the Warren Ranch, which is the last large cattle ranch that's active in Harris County. And then in the tan shaded areas, these are conservation easement properties, which are owned by those private individuals, but we protect them with that easement. So we originally, back in 2017 through 2023, were having conversations about how we could raise enough funding and get support for acquiring land that we didn't already own. And that was exciting to our board of directors at the time. So we put together a pitch deck. We were able to acquire support funding from a competitive program in Texas that allowed us to be evaluated as an innovative conservation tool. And that really got momentum behind the idea so that it wasn't just us. We had other foundations who were interested in the idea enough to support our concept. Our other goal was to establish Texas' first certified conservation cemetery through the Green Burial Council. So we loved the CBA. We loved the education we've been receiving through the peer groups, through the webinars like this one. And the Green Burial Council has been great as well. And so we started to shadow and learn and put together the pieces that we knew we could achieve once we put them together in order to get conservation cemetery designation. Another part of building support in those first few years was educating people about green burial. And so we spoke at board meetings, we spoke to different citizen groups, we spoke to our volunteer groups, our funders, to let people know about green burial as a concept and as a driving force behind this venture. We even had slides like this in our talks that we would give, educate people all the way back. Our funeral culture in the US, the Civil War, Abraham Lincoln, embalming, and how that was not always the way things were done in the US. And a big facet of the green burial movement is returning to a more family-led, simple process that's also kinder to the earth. So you never thought as an ecologist that we would be talking about Lincoln and embalming, but we certainly did. We also learned that there were people who supported our idea of launching a green cemetery for the environmental benefit. Maybe they didn't want to hear about funerals or embalming or burials, but they did like hearing about our impact for the earth. So showing that we actually are storing carbon with every green burial rather than emitting carbon dioxide, a greenhouse gas, was really intriguing to many supporters, and we were able to get more support that way. Again, we would educate our community. This is another slide that we shared commonly. What is a conservation cemetery? How is that different than different green cemeteries? So we would explain what it would take to launch one and what the Green Burial Council's regulations were in order to meet those metrics.
What did he do?
And again, the environmental benefits are huge, and preserving the imperiled ecosystem of the coastal prairie, improving water quality, soil health, flood mitigation, and improving biodiversity. This is from the Green Burial Council's website. This first map shows all the green cemeteries currently that are certified by the GBC in the US. And then this next slide shows many of us in the room tonight and that are active with the CBA current certified conservation cemeteries in the US. And so thankfully, we were able to achieve our goal of getting that certification in 2024. So we are on the map currently, along with many of you. So as I mentioned, our board originally approved the idea of launching a conservation cemetery as a way to help build support and even financial funding for acquiring new land. And we were hoping to get land west of our Indian Grass Preserve. That did not work out. We were not able to compete with the real estate development pressures that are happening all around us right now. And a lot of this land is actively becoming big subdivisions as we speak. So in 2023, we changed the conversation with our leadership and we started talking about, can we still do this? Can we still establish a conservation cemetery on land that we already own? And so then we started looking at our preserve system here on this map, and we wanted to choose a location that made sense for the ecosystem that would also be reachable for people. And so right here on the map where the big red star is, that is where we are located, Blazing Star Prairie and Blazing Star Sanctuary, which is the burial ground. We chose this location because it's on the southern end of Indian Grass Preserve, so it's a little bit closer to the city of Katy, which is a large metroplex. And it's also just 2 miles due south of our welcome center and our field office where we have facilities, classroom, restrooms, and we've been improving that space as well over the last couple of years. And so we wanted to tie these together and make it easy for people to navigate out there. So just to give you a little more context, driving from the welcome center to our MacBook viewing platform takes 20 minutes. So this is a large area of land. It's about 19,000 acres of land that we're looking at on the map. So we wanted people to be able to get between these two sites that are key to the community near us. All right. Once we chose a site, in 2024, we started the restoration process. And so we worked with lots of intelligent, smart people, landscape architects, surveyors, soil scientists. We looked at old aerial imagery. We did soil testing and wetland mitigation assessment. So the first thing we did in August 2024 is we carved out our wetlands. So about a year and a half ago, we sculpted these wetlands and they've been really successful, really exciting to see the bird life return literally within weeks. We started holding water there again because these wetlands were here originally, designed by Mother Nature. And there was, in this north wetland, there's a really cool plant that first evolved in the Jurassic, called a lycopod or a quillwort. And I did not know that plant. It looks like pine needles growing out of the wetland, like sharp pine needles. I was very worried that I had a new invasive species on my hand. But thankfully, quillworts are native. There's 2 species native to the Texas Gulf Coast. And this one in particular evolved on our freshwater potholes way back in the Jurassic. And then they've been around through the Ice Age prairies and wetlands, and then on remnant wetlands today. So it was really encouraging to see an ancient species return as soon as we recarved that wetland. Clearly there was a seed bank there just waiting. So that was really encouraging. We've had volunteers out. We have done prairie plantings. We've done native tree plantings along the edge of the property. And then, as some of you may know, blazing star is the name of this wildflower. Liatris or blazing star is a beautiful native prairie genus of plants. And we hope to have lots of them growing across our burial ground. So here's another timeline of what has occurred over the last few years. Between 2022 and 2024, we got our board approval. Then we started working in the background on how we would structure our relationship between Coastal Prairie Conservancy and Nature's Burial. We worked with a surveyor to establish the cemetery plat. We filed that plat with Waller County in the clerk office. So we officially became a cemetery in September 2024. We put together our management plan for our green burial certification, which we received in December 2024. And we were also in the background working on things like our systems, our contracts, our software. Elisa and I also visited several other green cemeteries and conservation burial grounds to learn from their teams. And that had been really helpful. I know like Freddie with Prairie Creek is on the call. Freddie's been a great mentor to us since 2020. And while we were doing that, we were also doing the ecological steps. So it was indeed a lot of work to, in parallel, be establishing a cemetery, which there's many legal and business hoops to jump through, and then restoring the actual landscape. Because the land that Blazing Star is on was not remnant prairie. So it does not look like this photo. This photo is taken at one of our restored prairies at Indian Grass, but the property Blazing Star was a rice farm, and then it was a Bermuda grass pasture for cattle grazing. So there's heavy restoration that has to happen when we decide to set up a new nature preserve. And so again, we sculpted those wetlands in the summer. We then did 2 cover crops, which enriched the soil, covered the soil, and prevented more invasive species from spreading. And that took a year. And then we just seeded our prairie on October 9th. So just weeks ago is when this property officially, we can say it's been restored back to prairie. And now we wait through this next spring to see what's going to germinate and which plants that were seeded are going to take to the soils that we've been preparing for them. In tandem with the restoration, we opened the cemetery officially about a year ago. We sold our very first plot in October 2024. We had our very first cremation interment just this past January. And then we had our first natural burial service in April for a lovely family. And we are still small. We've only had 7 natural burial interments, and I think it's been 6 cremation interments so far. So again, we're in year 1, just beginning as a cemetery. The other thing we received is a trail grant through Texas Parks and Wildlife Department. And so we're launching a design and trail construction this winter as well, because we want to give people access to the prairie. So that's what we show on this slide. We want to make sure that we are connecting people to the prairie in ways that are accessible for them and enjoyable for them. The tallgrass prairie ecosystem with grasses 8 feet tall is not something that you can easily traverse without a little help. And so we're working on those steps. We mentioned the birds earlier. This photo was taken last spring. So you can see the rows of cover crop across the Blazing Star property. Those are in this picture mostly millet, wheat, radishes, peas, and vetch. And so those are fixing nitrogen, building root channels into the soil, and then becoming compost once they die. So at this stage, we were not a prairie. We were a field with a cover crop, but we had those wetlands and the birds started coming back immediately. So this last summer we had quail nesting, we had meadowlarks nesting, we had black-necked stilts, willets, curlews, sandhill cranes, bald eagles, mottled ducks, all sorts of really rare specialty species who immediately came back. Let me make sure. All right. This photo is of Indian Grass Preserve, where our Welcome Center is. And this prairie was restored back in 2017. So again, this is not what Blazing Star looks like yet, but it's our goal for what Blazing Star will look like in the next few years as these prairie seeds start to grow and take root. Another interesting challenge with running a conservation cemetery on a tallgrass prairie is that these ecosystems rely on frequent disturbance in order to maintain healthy habitat. So frequent grazing and fire. Historically, the Katy Prairie experienced fire roughly every 3 to 5 years. So we burn on a 3-year rotation. We also graze at least once a year. So cattle or goats will come through and graze the property once a year, and we'll burn it every 3 years. And then we'll also use volunteers. We say we're going to be the buffalo, and we'll go out and graze away the woody species that tend to take over. So we'll be out with whoppers, mimicking a herd of buffalo, chomping down on anything with bark, because this is a prairie. The other thing we've been working on, all of our systems. We have a website that we're proud of. We have an interactive map where people can search for their loved one. So you can see there's Andrea's name on the screen. This is really helpful. Some of the conservation cemeteries in the US have native stone. If you have stone, you can use the native stone as a marker. The Gulf Coast of Texas does not have native stone. We are a young geologic area, barely what we would call shale or sandstone north of us. There's no rocks where we are. So we had to use markers and GPS coordinates in order to verify all of our plot locations. And so having an interactive walk to grave feature is really important. So people can find their loved one, know where they are, even when we have 8-foot tall grasses growing out there. Here's some photos from a service a couple of months ago. And so again, most of that in the background is still just cover crop. There is some woolly croton back there, which is native, but it's what I would call a baby prairie in that photo. So there's those aluminum survey markers, which we engrave for every service. And then we do mow temporary paths. So if people need to get to a plot for a burial, or maybe there's a memorial gathering for a family, if they let us know, we'll mow a path to their plot. But otherwise, we make sure to educate our families that that plot and that marker exists, but you may not be able to find it or walk right up to it once this prairie is mature. So again, yeah, GPS coordinates are important, and having those interactive memorial pages is very important. The other, I'd say, unique thing about our conservation cemetery is because we are on a big flat coastal plain prairie, this is what our plat looks like. our plat looks rather conventional. There are straight lines and rows and numbers, and there's a decent number of plots there in that 7.5 acres that are dedicated as cemetery. And that's because we don't have mountains in the way or a forest in the way. We have a big flat prairie. And so we were able to lay out a very simple grid system for our plots. And we're actually in the process right now of marking the corners with survey stakes of every single plot, which is quite the undertaking. We're, I don't know, maybe 10% through with that process right now. Most of you know this, but conservation burial requires low density. So our plots are large. They're 8 feet by 13.5 feet. And then we do have 2 cremation interment areas, and those plots are 5 by 5 feet. So you can see the natural burial area in the center here, and then our north cremation garden and our south cremation garden. We do plan to put in the trail system so people can walk around the burial ground. But again, if they want to visit a specific plot, then we will mow a temporary path for them. But otherwise, our permanent trails will just go around the entire burial ground. And then we will be planting a few native southern live oak trees as well. This Sunday, we're actually having a Jewish burial consecration ceremony. Several funeral homes and synagogues in the Houston area requested that we have that consecration. So we have dedicated 5 rows in the middle of the cemetery for Jewish burial only. And so we'll be dedicating that this Sunday. But we also, of course, want to be a very inclusive space. So we welcome all faiths and all traditions. And we love seeing that every service that we help host is unique and special to that person and their family.
Wow.
There's just a close-up again of our plots and how our plat is laid out on the prairie. And then a few more details about us and our operations so far. Like several others of you, we ordered a prairie wagon, a burial wagon that we use to hand pull the shrouded loved one or the casket to the place of rest. And then for every service, we have the family help us seed since we are actively restoring the site. So we have native prairie seed that we stomp around the burial place after the service. We also have a prairie hay bale with us at every single service. You can see that prairie hay over the top of the burial mound. That prairie hay is taken from a very rare remnant prairie in the region, so it's helping to inoculate the soil with native microbes and seeds from a never-tilled prairie that's nearby. We use those engraved metal markers, and then we have options for people for cemetery contractors. We don't hand dig every grave. I often tell families if they have like a lacrosse team in the family, they are welcome to hand dig a grave. But we have heavy soils. We have about 18 inches of thick loam topsoil, and then below that is clay dominated wetland soils. So it's heavy. But some families do take us up on the option of hand closing a grave or at least participating in the process before the contractor comes over with the mini excavator. We're currently still just building our network and letting funeral homes know that we are open and that we exist as an option. We've probably worked with 5 funeral homes so far, and we're actively educating the Houston area funeral homes about green burial and about our requirements of, basically pretty simple, right? Biodegradable container, natural clothing, and we encourage families to participate in ways that are natural. So they could bring cut flowers like you see in the photo. They can bring greenery. They can even bring paper notes. We had an interment for an infant, and her parents brought a fully organic, biodegradable small teddy bear that they interred with their daughter. And yes, family involvement, personalized services are really important to us, and we like having that meaning for them so that they can feel like they're part of their loved one's unique journey. we've grown a lot. So again, we've only been open a little over a year now. We've already hired 2 staff, Brittany Brand and Valerie Whiting. I think Valerie's on the call tonight. And we're super grateful to Valerie and Brittany, Elisa, myself, and all the Coastal Prairie Conservancy staff and board who've been supportive of this idea that now exists. And we're also really grateful to our volunteers, our neighbors, our farming tenants who have helped us, and very grateful to this community in the Conservation Burial Alliance for the education that we've received and the words of encouragement along the way, because it's certainly been a bumpy road at times, and it allowed us to have the fortitude to get to the finish line and to open our doors. So right now we're doing more volunteer programming. We're doing events out there, and we hope to be a really beautiful, transformed space a year from now. We hope to look like a prairie in a year and have accessible trails, boardwalks, a few trees, a shade structure, so that we have a little more public amenity when people arrive. Is a great quote by Mary Oliver. There is a graveyard. Well, I can't read the quote. Okay, well, my screen shares in front of the quote, but we all love Mary Oliver. And this is a field of blazing stars, again, on a restored prairie. So we really hope to see lots of blazing star wildflowers germinating beginning this spring. And then there's our contact information. If any of you have questions for us or want to pick our brains in more detail about how we launched and how it's going. And then we also are trying to get more active on Instagram. So we'd love it if y'all connect with us on Instagram as well, since we're trying to tell our story there. And that's all I have for my PowerPoint presentation. So now if we have questions, I'm happy to answer those and see if anyone wants to talk about any particulars.
Thank you, Bethany.
Yeah.
It's so exciting to see both like how this has been such a process to get to here, but also you're just right at the beginning of this much longer view. And
Yeah.
I'm excited to check in with you in a year or so and see how your prairie is growing.
Yeah. Thank you. We are too.
Really cool. Do
Yeah.
you anticipate that you will be using fire on the cemetery area? You guys talked about that at all? Yeah.
We do. Yeah. Yeah. We want to use prescribed fire across that whole preserve section. So yes, that's the goal. And yes, I'm a little nervous about the aluminum markers, but we'll see how that goes.
How it goes. So it looks like we have a couple of questions so far. HK from Ian Woods just said, thanks so much, Bethany. What is the legal structure between the land trust and the cemetery, and what are about the financial arrangements between the two?
Yeah. So Nature's Burial is a wholly owned LLC that is a subsidiary of Coastal Prairie Conservancy. And so it's a charitable LLC that's wholly owned structurally underneath Coastal Prairie Conservancy. And so we are part of Coastal Prairie Conservancy. And our funding that we're raising through plot sales at the Conservation Burial Ground is 100% to support the mission of Coastal Prairie Conservancy, and that's been our design from the get-go. Because so we have a unique structure that we're completely integrated with our land trust, right? And so I think our current arrangement is 25% of every plot sale goes up to Coastal Prairie Conservancy for conservation funding. And then we hold 15% back for a long-term care fund. We're not a perpetual care cemetery at this time, but it's our goal to become a perpetual care cemetery. So we're already following that rule of holding 15% from every sale in a dedicated fund.
Thank you. That's really helpful.
Sure.
So Susan is also saying congrats. It's very impressive. And wondering, speaking of the aluminum tags, so it sounds like you're using metal tags on each grave. And how did you guys come to that way of thinking?
Well, I think we learned about the survey tags from Prairie Creek and Larkspur, and there's probably a few others of you who use them, right? And it just, yeah, it made sense to us, and we knew we couldn't use stone that wouldn't be appropriate for our site. So we liked the markers, and so we ran with that. Yeah.
Can you find those with metal detectors?
You can't find the aluminum. So they're on 12-inch rebar that's sunk in the ground. You can find the rebar. So yeah, but the aluminum itself, you cannot. And you can order a aluminum survey marker with a little magnet under it that's ferrous. So so I do that. So even if my marker somehow dislodges from the rebar, I could find that marker. Yes, and we have found those aluminum markers are getting buried by nature much faster than we thought they would. So we heavily rely on Google Earth on our phones and our metal detector and a measuring tape.
Measuring tape. I love you, measuring tape. There are a couple of questions that are sort of related to the wetland that you are preserving in particular, but also how you mentioned that the larger Coastal Prairie Conservancy acts kind of as a sponge, the waterways that are feeding into Houston.
Yeah.
So some questions about sort of how the cemetery is affected by that or impacting wetlands at all.
Yeah. Right. So the cemetery has 14 acres of created wetlands. And then we actually just a few weeks ago started sculpting another wetland section on the north end of the Blazing Star Prairie. So I haven't even measured that one yet, but those two new wetlands on our map are 14 acres. So we are holding water that the Katy Prairie was originally designed to hold. Those wetlands were originally there, and then they were filled in for rice farming probably in the 1930s through the 50s when rice farming was big in the Gulf Coast of Texas. So bringing the wetlands back allows us to hold water back from our downstream neighbors. And then the prairie itself, those deep roots of prairie plants are famous for drinking up lots of rainwater. We did a comparative analysis, and your average lawn, like St. Augustine, Bermuda grass, Kentucky bluegrass lawn, can absorb about a half inch of rainfall an hour, whereas a native coastal prairie absorbs about 8 inches of rainfall per hour. So it's impressive that what the prairie can do if we have it. So once we have those plants established, they'll start acting as that sponge, soaking up all that water.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
That's really cool. We have a couple of questions that are cremation related. One person just asking if they can bury the cremated remains of their pet with them. And also, is it just one body burial per burial plot?
Yeah. So our plots, yes, each natural burial plot only allows for one body burial, and that's again to meet that Green Burial Council conservation cemetery certification requirement that we have low density burials, no more than 300 burials per acre. So we're meeting that. Cremation remains can be interred in a biodegradable urn or just poured into a grave, and we do put in some of that native prairie hay to help minimize the impact, of those mineralized compost cremated remains. And Texas has an interesting cemetery code. Another branch of starting a cemetery is memorizing all of the strange laws in your state regarding cemeteries and funeral homes. And I actually went to funeral school in 2020 to really dive into this venture and make sure I knew every facet of this death care industry that we're part of. Yes. So in Texas, the code is written that if you have a cemetery, it is designed for humans and human remains. It does not say pets are not allowed, but it says they're only for humans. And so legally in Texas right now, you can't have a combined human and pet cemetery if you're following the code. There are some where you can do that, but we're following the code to the T. So we're not interring pets. Pet cremains, we don't memorialize them, but if someone wants to have, their pets remains in an urn with them when they are buried, then we are allowing that.
That makes sense. Yeah, it's interesting which states are whole family burial grounds, where animals be buried with, and which ones you can bury animals anywhere except in a human cemetery.
Yeah.
Very
Yep.
curious.
Yeah.
Susan is wondering why you are going ahead and marking each corner of each grave plot.
It would be nearly impossible once the prairie starts to mature. It's those, and we wouldn't want to disturb like each clump grass, like that you see in this photo, like this switchgrass in the foreground. Each one of those lives 40, 50 years. And then there's silphium sunflowers that can live hundreds of years. So they're like trees. And so we want to respect those plants once they're established, and we don't want to disturb them. So we have this little window of time. We've restored the soils, we've seeded, but we're not a prairie yet. So we can get all those markers in the ground and then let the prairie go wild.
Makes sense. And doing it individually as opposed to sort of in groups.
Well, the groups are rows. But yeah, for the actual logistics of running string lines and making sure you have nice straight angles, yes, we are doing it in groups. Again, string lines and measuring tape and flags. Those are our friends right now. We've joked that we're going to start a survey company if we don't keep running a cemetery for some reason.
I stick with the cemetery a while longer. See.
Yeah. It's just interesting the skills that you develop that you never knew you would grow. Yeah.
Yep, very much so. Vinya is wanting to know, what is the most surprising thing that you learned throughout this process of bringing this beautiful vision into reality?
Good question. I think we were nervous. We were nervous that people wouldn't get it. The big flat prairies of Texas, of Southeast Texas, aren't as, glamorous as other biomes on planet Earth. So, oh, got her.
I got her.
Thank you. Yeah. We didn't, and especially as a baby prairie, a prairie that's been like when people arrived to tour the cemetery this last year, when they got out of their car, they did not see a prairie. They saw field peas, radishes, millet. It looked more like a farm while we were building the soil. And so what we've been most surprised about is how much people got excited and understood what we were doing and loved it. So yeah, having like immediate appreciation and buy-in from the people that come to visit has been like super encouraging.
And it seems to me that you guys are doing regular open houses where folks can come and do kind of a guided tour.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At first it was just me before we brought Valerie and Brittany on, in terms of boots on the ground. So when the phone started ringing, I knew I needed to have certain days of the month where I could just be there to visit with people and talk to them about the cemetery and let them see it. Everybody wants to see it before they buy a plot. So yeah, open houses have been helpful to us to just like target, people who might want to see it out of curiosity or people who are more serious and would like to buy a plot from us. But now that we're growing even more and we have a team, we are able to like schedule private tours as well for families.
Hang on just a moment. It looks like there is a question about soil additives for cremated remains, the alkalinity and the salinity, and whether you guys whether the prairie hay feels like enough of a sort of a balancer, or whether you've used any of the additives like Let Your Love Grow.
Yeah, we haven't used Let Your Love Grow yet. I looked into them. I have them on our list of potential, but for now, we think having the native prairie hay that has beneficial microbes and natural organic materials is enough, because our cremation gardens are small. We're not allowing scattering of cremated remains. We've chosen to avoid that. And the cremated remains, plots are pretty large at 5 by 5 feet. So we think that what we're doing is enough, but are we experts yet? No.
Yeah. I feel like we're all learning as we go on how to work with cremated remains in a
Yeah.
way that is not overly impactful.
Mhm.
Laura is asking, thank you for this great presentation. Can you talk more about the business and finance planning, sources of startup funds, and how you were able to staff up?
Yeah, we didn't start staffing up until July or August a few months ago, and that's because we were selling plots. So we started having money in the bank, enough to hire our first two staff. And what we ask for in that job description is that they be flexible and grow with us. So we didn't promise a full-time salary or even a part-time salary. We promised an hourly um, living wage, and we promised frequent communication with as we grow and as our jobs are evolving and roles are evolving and the amount of time it's taking. We asked for flexibility, but offered lots of communication and support for our staff. And it's an exciting time to be on the team in this first year and really help to build this Nature's Burial and Blazing Star. But yes, we're lucky that we have a nimble team. That's been key. Elisa and I were already full-time staff of Coastal Prairie Conservancy. And so I would say that Elisa and I have just worked a lot of hours that maybe we would not have worked otherwise, because we both are personally passionate about this project and about making it happen. And then Elisa's on the call if she wants to help me remember, but our board of directors for Coastal Prairie Conservancy, I guess it was about a year ago, approved basically a loan to Nature's Burial as our seed money to get started, and then we repay that. So having an established land trust as our parent has certainly made this easier for us.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
And can you switch again to the contact information
Yeah.
slide? Someone is asking how much each plot costs, and I'm imagining they can find that on your website also, but
Wow.
Yes, for sure. Yeah, right now the natural burial plots are 4,000 and the cremation plots are 1,500. And I did another ask I did after CPC hired me in 2021 is I did like a market analysis of cemeteries in the Houston area and then green cemeteries across the US to try and come up with a median price point that would be affordable to people, but also enough where we could achieve our goal of having conservation financing for the lift that it takes to take care of the 13,000 acres that we own and the 34,000 acres that we protect.
it's a mix.
Can I pipe in on one thing, Bethany?
Yes, there's
So,
Elisa.
in addition to the Valerie and Brittany, which are our additions this year, we did have some initial seed funding there was like a kind of an innovative financing grant called the Texas Outcomes Based Challenge. It was just sort of a one and done, and it was, what can you do to be innovative for conservation and enhancing water quality and environmental benefits. It was specific to Texas and founded and funded by some Texas foundations, but that is what allowed us to, you can see our little logo. We developed our website like we were able to fund those things. And most importantly, we were able to, bring Bethany on to the team. And at that time, she wasn't full-time, she was part-time, but she was so amazing. She quickly became a part-time and is now overseeing all of our, volunteer programs, our outreach programs, our stewardship of our public facing preserves. So she has a full-time job. But at the beginning, she was very much dedicated on bringing this concept from an idea into actuality. And so that was very key and critical, is bringing in the right people. And Bethany clearly has like all the skills. She had the wildlife and the death care and everything. So I do think having the right people on the team that can multitask, and there's all different kinds of things that go into making this successful. And so having that flexibility and a skilled team is really part of it. So
Yep. Thanks, Lisa.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
the nimbleness and the willingness to learn, to become a
Yes.
surveyor.
That's right. Yeah. And as Elisa mentioned, that Texas Outcomes Based Challenge, which was supported by several foundations in our state. It was a competitive challenge. We applied, we won one of the grants. And that was also a source of seed money for us to explore the idea further. And yeah, get a website, get a logo, and start pushing for it to come to fruition.
Elisa, if there is anything that you could tell your past self when you were just beginning to broach this idea within the land trust, does anything come to mind?
I mean, I think our story of perseverance, like we'd catch ourselves saying, if we ever do this cemetery thing, and we'd be like, no, when we're going to do it, we'd have to remind ourselves, that it was because it took us a while to get all the pieces in place and to launch, and it's just really thrilling that we've hit this point.
Cheers to perseverance.
That's right. Yeah. And Lisa first got excited about green burial back in 2008 at a green burial conference in Colorado. So yeah, it does take
first green burial council conference.
Yeah. Yeah. And then she talked to the Campbells at Ramsey Creek and got more excited. So
that is awesome.
Yeah.
That is awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Holly has chimed in. What a beautiful stewarding of this precious land. Congratulations, and on we go. Thank you for your concise and eloquent presentation.
Thank you.
Want to thank you both for sharing the long road and the hard work and the long view and the big vision and the nitty-gritty details, all of which are necessary.
That's right. Definitely. All right. Thank you, Jody. Thanks everybody with us tonight.
Thank you. It was excellent.
And I will be uploading this to the Conservation Burial Alliance YouTube channel, so you can feel free to share with anyone who wasn't able to make it this evening. And again, Bethany, thank you. Really appreciate sharing the story.
You bet.
All right. Take care, everybody. Have a beautiful rest of your evening.
Good.